Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. We had a really good start, but hopefully we'll keep up the good momentum and keep you engaged and interested on the topics that follow. And if you look at the program, they're closely related. We had a good introduction already about issues that one way or another we're going to see relate to what I'm going to be talking about on sustainability. I'm going to be addressing a little bit different scale because you see there it refers general, the built environment. And before I move on to the presentation, I want to make sure that you recognize that this work that I'm going to be presenting is the result of an ongoing European project within the Inter-Mediterranean program. And collaborators like Poppy Drucha and Navaskalaki and some Kudrikyanidis are part of our team that we have been over the last couple of years engaging on this interesting topic. And because you're not going to be seeing this information at the end, if you want to really see a little bit more details about the project, the work that we are doing, the website, as you see, appears on this first slide. So that's where you can follow up. Follow up on what? On the general issue of sustainability. And if someone asks you, what does that actually mean? You have to really maybe spend a few minutes or spend my whole presentation trying to cover what you see there appearing in the different areas and the different topics, including what we heard this morning. But definitely the main areas, pillars of what sustainability is all about. It includes and addresses energy, the environment, whether that also relates to the emissions, the natural resources, the economy, the urban systems, but also the society and the social aspects. Now, already again, we heard about the need to have, for example, with indoor environmental quality or air quality, specific indicators, specific ways of expressing and quantifying. This is the general approach that indeed in trying to assess sustainability, you need to consider different indicators, different metrics in order to be able to pull everything together and say whether you are moving or you are achieving your sustainability. Now, because of the plethora, because of the great number of these indicators, the problem becomes complex. Addressing, as we said, all these different issues, all these different keywords that we have heard, and individually, if you think about it, it's a task to be able to address each one of them. Now imagine if you want to put everything together and look at this vast areas and topics. That's a challenge. So how do we actually try to put it together? Try to really address energy along with indoor environmental quality, along with all the other important issues of sustainability. So that's our problem. That's where we want to be able to provide some guidance. And already, because we recognize the importance of these issues, coming from the greatest level or the biggest scale at the UN, at the global scale, we have been fortunate to already, over the years, start really coming down to specifics in terms of setting goals in order to be able to achieve sustainability at a large scale, at the world level. So we have the Agenda 2030, where the UN has specified specific goals, objectives of what we need to achieve. And then moving down to different regions, different parts of the world. For example, our neighborhood, the European Union. There, again, you have, and they have added just more European-specific objectives and goals. And as you see, moving down with the national adaptation of these initiatives, we have specific goals at national level. Then you come down and you have more specific ways, indicators of addressing and expressing what is important at your regional level. And then finally, it reaches us. It reaches down to the cities, down to the neighborhoods, down to the people. And of course, as you move down in all this process, all these stages, you add more and more specific areas, topics, you express them through the indicators, and they add up, and they become more and more complex as you include more and more areas, topics that you need to address. But think about it a little bit. What is really important is it what they're thinking at the UN level for the global issues? God, that looks so big. Just down here, down at the ground level, help me, what do I need to do? What do I need? And there you set your local priorities. Now that has the most direct impact on us, the people, the citizens, because that's going to affect our lives, the way we actually go through all these different areas, and at the same time being able to improve our lives. Now, this process kind of like falls under the big theme, and I want you to keep that in mind. We're thinking globally, but if we want to act, be effective, we need to act locally. So that's where, although this process, as you see, it's a top-down, the pyramid actually sits on the ground level, at the local level, at the city level, and that's where we need to provide the support, the necessary support in order to be able to handle it. So that kind of like introduces what we're trying to achieve along the already set up, established issues that we are trying to challenge. Now, why it was important to try, what kind of problem we're trying to solve. Now, we want to be able to really have a common language so that we can understand each other what we mean when we say we have a system, we have a methodology to assess sustainability. It's not just the type of language, but also the content. It's not just the terms, but also the content of what it implies. That builds the perception of all these different issues. What do you understand when I'm saying energy, when I'm saying environment? And that, to be able to implement and assess, you need some specific targets that are linked to the different indicators that describe the specific issues. We want to also be able to monitor. So we start a process of achieving our goals, we set them, we evaluate the existing condition, and then we move on. Are we improving? Are we getting better? That also would be an excellent opportunity to have a system, to have a way to share experiences, learn from each other. What has and what is working in an area, can we learn from them? The successes, the failures, because both is valuable, good information. In trying to answer of what are you actually doing with this methodology, we're trying to approach the bigger scale. It is an issue, and we heard specific problems in specific areas when you're trying to look at a building. Now imagine if you're looking at a bigger scale, various, numerous buildings to build up your neighborhood, to build up your city. And there you can say, oh, well, there's greater opportunities. Exactly. We can be more effective because we're looking at a bigger scale. But also, although we're going to need to work together and have our buildings looked at how they can operate together, synergies, we're trying to look at the larger scale sustainable solutions. So there are opportunities, but also there are challenges because we're increasing the complexity of the issue. And I said the word in the wrong tense, not just issue, issues. So all this, different issues, different sustainability priorities that we're setting at a bigger scale, all of a sudden become, in this multi-criteria approach that we're trying to do, to have even more complex. So having a tool, having a methodology that will help us through this process is what we're trying to achieve. Now, if that tool is something that is developed in a different country, in a different area, how useful, how practical would it be for me to take it and use it locally? In order to be able to actually and easily implement, it needs to be adaptable. It needs to be able to fit and understand my local priorities that may be different from somewhere else. And also, and that was part of the key words used in the title, it needs to be simple. You shouldn't be really required, in order to use such a tool, to be useful and practical, to go and have experts that have masters or PhDs in the topics, in the areas. And actually, because of the complexities, you will need an army of these individuals that are experts in different fields and different areas. So that would make it cumbersome to use. It may have fantastic features, but I wouldn't be able to practically use it. So that simplicity is another facet of what we're trying to achieve. And at the end, if that's something simpler to use, that means it would be lower cost in terms of implementing, because cost is always important in any kind of an application. And also, as a result of being able to adapt it to my own needs, then that means I own it. It is my tool. It becomes something, a tool that I can use locally. So that sense of local ownership, to be able to adapt, is an added value if we can achieve it. So that's what we're trying to do in the big scale. How did we do the work? First of all, we had a team. There was a collaboration of organizations, 12 of them, from different countries. That gives all of a sudden that international flavor. That means we are addressing and looking at different needs. And we had the honor and the pleasure to be part of this effort. But in addition to this, we had cities. We have cities engaged in this process. So in addition to the experts, we had at this local level the representatives that actually are directly involved and engaged in operating and running the city and the way of really addressing this type of problems. We also had, and we engaged with experts at the national levels. So there was an exchange of ideas, problems, issues, solutions, looking and critically reviewing what has been achieved, and also engaging citizens in this dialogue. Where we started, as you see, it wasn't to, in a way, rediscover the wheel, as we say, start from nothing. No, already there has been so much work done in this area. We didn't want to introduce, and there was no need to introduce new sustainability issues, new indicators. So nothing new was introduced, but rather to be able to merge all this previous work that was reviewed, to put it together and constitute a starting basis to move from there on. In addition, and while we were developing at different stages, there were different workshops where in working groups, we're critically reviewing with not just the partners of the project, of the specific project, but from other experts from different parts of Europe, coming and looking and requesting input and exchanging ideas. So at the end, trying to come out with something of practical use and value. And then you need to take it out for a test drive. And then you need to really find out, would it work in different countries, in different cities? So there were a number of pilots that were completed following this approach, and that now gives the flavor of what we have achieved of defining the issues, defining the indicators, and defining the most important indicators of them that we call KPIs, the key performance indicators that we can all share, and we'll see how we do it. Just a glimpse of what's behind and what's hidden in this methodology. As we said, and we understand the complexity, you have to organize the information. In order to be able to manage it, handle it, you have to organize it. So the organization for every sustainability issue that we have, to associate the different categories and the different criteria and the different indicators that fall and satisfy this sustainability issues. Most of the time, to have an example, we're talking about energy, a pillar in terms of talking and addressing sustainability. When we're talking about energy, which is an issue, a category can be the non-renewable energy sources. How much non-renewable energy you are consuming. The criteria, most of the times we use for this and expressing this, is, for example, the thermal energy. Could be the electrical energy, could be the total final, could be primary. Different aspects, different facets of the same category. And then an indicator that we commonly use, the amount of energy per unit floor area. So that's the example of how we try to organize this information. That could, of course, include economy, and, for example, look at unemployment in an area, in a region. It could also include social aspects, for example, pedestrian streets, bicycle paths, and so forth, where there you express the length per resident in the area. So these are the ways for the different issues, for the different categories of what is important in terms of assessing sustainability, the indicators that we use to quantify. After the evolution of the process that I described before, the organization at the different scales, starting from the building and then looking at the bigger scale, the neighborhood, the urban environment, you see the organization of the different issues, and on the right-hand side, you look at the minimum, the most important indicators that we need to include in our assessment in order to be able to handle and address sustainability in a most fundamental level. You see that the general framework already includes the 7 sustainability pillars, the issues, 25 categories you identify under each one, and a total of 153. That's a big number. That's a big number. Nobody's probably going to use all of them, but you can select, as you will see, from these general, most comprehensive number of indicators, the ones that would fit and meet your expectations, your vision, your goal at assessing sustainability. As a minimum, though, we need to address these 13. In a similar manner, going to the urban scale, to the bigger scale, you say there's a different number of categories, and now we have reached close to 180 criteria. Wow. So that, just to give you an idea of really the comprehensive starting point, down from where we can select what we will be using, because that would be the part where it says actually we are adapting to our local needs to fit our local priorities, our local goals. In this case, we have 16 minimum, fundamental, very important sustainability indicators, the key performance indicators. There are 3 more in terms of the number, but still a very manageable number of indicators that we need to keep track of and monitor and see how we progress, because that's what we're going to be using as a minimum in order to address sustainability. We're probably going to need more. We're going to see a little bit of the number later on to see what is a realistic number to expect. Now, behind the tool, in every methodology that we have in addressing very numerous systems existing, most of them commercial, in the private sector, because of the need, they have been developed, they're available. Some are public, but all of them have one common characteristic. You understand, how do I grade, score, say how good or bad is an indicator that has different numerical values, and most important, has different units. We are comparing and we are quantifying different concepts, different indicators, to cover different areas, different needs. How do we put them all together in order to really dimensionalize and handle this diversity? We defined 2 points, and then we take a linear correlation to explain the in-between, between the 0 and the 5. What is a 0? Bare minimum. The law. What does the law mandate? If you do not have a law that mandates the minimum requirements, then what is the common practice? And then the 5, what is the optimum? What is the goal? For example, if we had energy, if we had the energy performance of the building, the energy use of the building, minimum requirement in Greece and throughout Europe is EPBD, it's CANAC. So that would score you the energy use per unit floor area at 0 would be according to CANAC, your minimum bare requirement. What is the 5, the optimum, the best practice? That would be what will be presented later on today, the nearly 0, the optimum or net 0 building. So for every indicator, that work has been done, and it has been done also at a national level through this exercise. And depending on your numerical value every time, you can score, depending on where you fit between the 0 and 5, in order to be able to get a normalized score at the end for each indicator. So the big picture of the process, we have defined the criteria and the indicators. We have defined the assessment method of how you're going to be doing this in terms of the scoring. Everything has been integrated to multi-criteria system. And then also this process, the contextualization to adapt to national and local context, has been performed and done for the 6 countries during the development. And also we have developed a city tool because we were test driving the whole process in different cities. So altogether now, from the general framework, the big idea, the most inclusive with everything in it, we have done to the level of the national selection down to the city application and the implementation through the pilots. Now this process allows, and finally when you reach the local level, to really have a practical tool that you can use, so it's much lower cost than what it would cost to get experts engaged in different systems. It gives you a sense of ownership, meaning it's my tool. It's the tool we use in Thessaloniki. So it's somebody else's. It's our tool that we here use in order to handle the complex sustainability issues and to be able to integrate your different policies. Just by doing the exercise, what we learn, first of all, it gets you organized. It gets the right people around the table to think of what is important in terms of adopting the method. Already you start thinking of what information you have available, so that gets you organized. A key challenge when you're talking about municipalities, cities, to get organized with the different departments, the different people, where the information is all available, and try to bring it together. By definition, this process already forces you to take one step in a positive direction, in the right direction, in terms of really being able to do the right housekeeping, to collect the available but scattered data, and then, of course, identify possible gaps, missing information, because unless you have the available information, how can you be assessing your performance sustainability if you do not know what's happening, if you do not have the necessary data? Very quickly, we're not going to go through every step of how the tool progresses, but to give you some ideas in terms of the important first steps. The important first step, thinking locally, and having this tool that we said, not only available at a national level in different languages, it wasn't an issue of translating the information, but in the generic framework, developing a tool that already has gone through the pre-selection of the most important information. In the field, what would be important to decide, whether you are a consultant, an expert, engaging, trying to support a municipality, a city moving in this direction, is the first step. From the different issues, define your priorities. In the city of Thessaloniki, what is the most important issue? And you give them different levels from 1 to 3 being the most important in the different areas. That has an implication of how you're going to be assessing the different scenarios, the different progress you're making. And of course, it will change with time. Because today, it's the environment or the energy. Tomorrow are the social issues that are most important. Maybe, possibly, in this neighborhood, in this area, which may be different from another part of the city. So you can have not only your national, not only your city tool, but then for different pieces, areas within the urban context of your city. The second step is, for every indicator, of course, you have to do some work. You have to collect the data. You have to be able to analyze and provide the numerical value. Now, before you do it for every indicator, you need to select what is important for us. What is important for Thessaloniki, the different indicators that we need to select. So you go through and you prepare, you do it once, what this tool should consider in addition to the minimum number of key performance indicators that you cannot exclude. It's the bare minimum. So for the buildings, in addition to the 13, for the urban scale, in addition to the 16, what other indicators are important? So you go through the list once and you activate them, or rather you deactivate them, so you do not take them into account. You don't have to be looking at information or areas or topics that are not of significance for your specific area, for your specific city. So the selection of the bare minimum, the KPIs, always have to be part of the tool, but then for the different issues, you may have different indicators that you may wish to select or unselect in order to be able to move to the third step, which for the selected ones, now let's do some work. First of all, there is information available because of the different expertise, the different background that you need to have for all these issues, indicators. What do they mean? Give me some help. Is there a national mandate, a national guideline, a way to approach? Give me some information in order to be able to understand a little bit. So there's a presentation for every one, for every indicator. And there, in addition to all this background, it's the way you actually provide the input. What is the input? For example, how much energy you consume in that building or you consume in that urban part of your city, with all the buildings looking at as a whole. Once you provide this numerical value for your problem, for your indicators, there is a benchmark where it actually tells you and going to grade you how well you're doing. So that could be, for example, for typical in our city, that energy use, whether it's below or outside, as we said before, the 0 and 5. There you can adapt it, because you look at the part of the city where there are old traditional buildings under different laws, different maintenance requirements and so forth that do not meet your routine standard levels. So there you can adjust and provide for this specific problem project you're looking different scales that you can assess your problem. At the end, the final thing is simple in terms of an overview of the performance and a final score. Putting all this now information, it is trying to provide you with an overview of how well you're doing at different sustainability issues, how well you're scoring, and how the information is being processed where you can communicate. You can communicate to the decision makers where they actually want to know and be able to track how well are we doing in energy, how well are we doing in the environment in different issues, and then try different scenarios, different ways of saying, what if we renovate buildings? What if we build more pedestrian strips? What if we have more green spaces? And how well would that help us improve our sustainability performance? In order to assess the process, we said we went through and tried this and worked with local experts and local teams in the 6 countries, the 8 cities. As a result of this pilots, the exercise, interesting information I thought to share with you was what they did in terms of the different national versions, the different teams. For the building, the most important area, issue, energy and resources, were about 32% of the indicators they included for the building were under this category. Rather expected, because this is the hot item. Looking at the urban scale, you see the social aspects. When we're looking at the urban, at the neighborhoods, at the city, the social aspects, all of a sudden, in addition to, they're close with energy we you expect, is the result of the different national teams working and trying to put an overview that this is the common situation. Another overview that I want to share with you is for the different cities, how many, for example, categories they engage. You see, different cities, different parts, different priorities. Overall, though, I think it's interesting to note that it seems if you want to assess sustainability in a building, you have to look at 28 indicators, plus or minus. If you want to look at the urban scale and assess sustainability, you're probably going to end up with about 39 indicators. That is in addition, or including, excuse me, the minimum that we said in all cases, we're using 13 KPIs for the building and 16 for the urban. Why is that important? In addition, it's the bare minimum to assess sustainability, but also it's the information we're going to be sharing among us, different areas within your city, different cities, different countries, comparing, because the key performance indicators are calculated according to standards in a common way, and you cannot alter that. So that is the common basis, taking this information in a passport that we can exchange with each other and learn from each other more than anything else. Finishing up, how this tool can be used in the decision-making process. We actually try to simulate the process with working with our local authorities, as we said, in the different cities, and starting from the initial organization, I think one of the most important steps is right here. And it's actually, I think, very well decided and very correctly decided to put as, if I could even say, zero, base, ground zero. Get the right people around the table. Engage the right people, whether that would be decision makers, whether that would be staff in the city, technical engineers, consultants. Everybody needs to be engaged in the process in order to be able for you to use the tools and the methodology developed in terms of developing your own local tools, and then start and using this to assess scenarios of what we do, whether we'll give more emphasis in open green spaces, whether we'll place more emphasis on environmental issues and so forth, rating and evaluating, and then deciding and finally making a plan for implementation, and then using the same tools to monitor how are we improving. Because in the decision-making process, you need to provide facts in terms of where we started and how things are improving. And this process now provides you with the metrics in a comprehensive way that you can communicate this information not only to the decision makers, but also to the people, to the citizens that are actually engaged in this whole process, and to make it effective. One last thing is that a lot of material is already available in an electronic manner, freely accessible, and in different languages, including Greek, in order to be able to take this information and do your own in-house training, if you're in a municipality, if you're in an area, or if you're an expert in energy, but would like, because you are engaging in sustainability, consulting services and so forth, to learn a little bit more in the other issues, in the other indicators. What do I do? One, I think, good first step is to get this material, provides you, I think, a good introduction, good way of really learning a little bit more, and you can kind of like use it as a program, saying, well, I want to study this, I want to read this. And for cities, what we've been trying to do is really educate them and provide them with this material, because they can carry on and continue into the future in terms of keeping their staff, keeping their technical departments informed. Thank you very much for your attention. We're not going to probably take questions, but I'm going to be here for the rest of the day, so I'll be happy to answer any questions. But I gave you the website address at the beginning. You can visit them and see whether that could be something of use and interest to you to take. It's open, use, it's easy, and adapt to make it your own, and put it into the test to help you achieve in a more feasible way sustainability. Thank you very much.